All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello. I love it, Albert. What do you have to tell me, Albert? You have something special to tell me? You can tell me now. Don't wait. My signal is bad. The connection is poor. We can't hear you. The music's too loud. What criticism am I going to get right away that tilts me to the point that I can't even think coherent thoughts when I have to speak extemporaneously for 2 hours?
Why are you yelling?
Just don't even...
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
I don't understand sometimes how we do it. Albert, I'm delighted that you're here.
Albert, thank you.
Have you tweeted and blue skied and social media today? You have? Wow.
Yes, I have, yeah.
Very, very.
Albert, thank you.
Very impressive. Very impressive. We have no Kim today.
Kim, how are you?
She is traveling today. In California, it is stormy, but Kim is undaunted. She is traveling to celebrate her son's birthday. They're traveling to Southern California, where it is stormy. So, good luck, Kim.
I blame you.
I hope that we have good reports on Kim's outing. I have David K. Johnston with a surprise appearance today. That is right. Yeah, right out of the chute. He'll join us in minutes with the breaking news about the former Prince Andrew. This is all messed up. We had such technical issues getting the show on the air today.
There's never been anything like this.
A system coming in tomorrow. It'll be installed to give us some backup. Incredible. Anyway, that's where we're a little bit behind. I also have Olympics news a little bit later that I will get to. In an hour or two, the former federal prosecutor and a fan favorite, David Katz, joins us. One of the emerging issues I want to speak to David K. Johnston about doesn't have anything to do with Andrew, but because I have him, I'm going to try to steal a question about what I think is a straight-up scam to deliver money in some of these warehouse acquisitions that I've talked to you about. You know, the Department of Homeland Security acquiring this warehouse space. I mean, there's a lot, in my judgment, scandalous about this. First of all, the size of these places is insane. We're talking about, you know, warehouse space to house 10,000 people, and these warehouses will be detention centers that are scattered all across the country. Well, that gives you a window into what's really happening here. This isn't a deportation plan. This is a detention plan, and private industry and the private prison system has buy-in here. But there's even a bigger scam, or as big a scam going on, to money interests associated with the acquisition of those warehouses. And I've talked to you about these small towns that are even pushing back on the warehouses. They don't want... I gave you the story, I think it was yesterday, about that town of 5,000 people. They don't want a detention center that's going to house 10,000 people there, and their infrastructure isn't set up to handle the influx of employees, to their support structures associated with it. But the real scandal is, of course, about the money. And if you follow the money with the Trump regime, you will always find the scam, you will always find the grift, and you will find it here, and it involves... At least, I think it involves Russians and Russian oligarchical underpinnings that really inform a lot of these acquisitions. So all of that's still to come, and I'll shoehorn a question about that with David K. Johnston, because he's got a lot of experience, and he's written in his books about the ways in which Russian interests took a lot of real estate in the form of condos and whatnot at Trump Tower and overpaid for it. It's all in David's writing, so I'm going to kind of do a flashback to some of that. So we've got a lot to get to. Thank you for being here. Smash the like button. I'll mention one last thing. We have just acquired a Facebook page, which is very exciting. And this new Facebook page is a place that we'll be able to post videos and content on Facebook. We're excited about growing the page, and I invite you all to join it. It's free, of course. The link is in the show description. And thank you for joining us on Facebook and sharing it. And again, new Facebook page. Albert has it up now. There will be videos and other content there, and we are excited. It just is up. It's brand new. It still has the new smell. Jump on it and enjoy it. Our new Facebook page. We appreciate it. And again, a link to it in the description under this video. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
there is big news out of the royal family related to Jeffrey Epstein, the revelations around the former Prince Andrew. It is one of the topics that we will bring up with the guy who we are so excited to speak to once a week. And this week, we get a second time at it. Here's David K. Johnston, everyone. Hi, David.
Hello, Mark. Good to see you.
David, give me some thoughts on this Andrew revelation of the day.
So, a couple of weeks ago, King Charles threw his brother out of the royal family. And at that point, at least to me, it was quite clear that something was coming, that he wanted him to be disassociated. The last time an actual royal was arrested was King Charles I, the namesake of the current king, in 1647. And 2 years later, he was beheaded. Now, the former Prince Andrew doesn't have to worry about that fate. But the person who should be most worried beyond Andrew about what happened is Donald Trump. And I want to explain why. First of all, the local British police who arrested Andrew did not do what you normally do with a white-collar criminal, what you would certainly do with a royal or even a former royal. You call them up on the phone and say, we need you to come down to the police station. You might even call their lawyers and have the lawyer bring you to the police station. They showed up with 8 carloads of cops and they grabbed him. No warning, no notice. They put him in a cell like everybody else. This is a tactic designed to send a signal, not so much to Andrew as to other people, that we've really got something. We know we have him so solid, we're not worried about any blowback. Our case is not going to fall apart. And if you have reason to be concerned about a connection with Epstein, you need to come in now and try to make a deal. Now, in prosecutions like this, the game is that you get someone who's vulnerable and who you can absolutely thoroughly nail. And that's going to bring me to security guards in a moment. And you lean on them for somebody higher up. And of course, what's the biggest fish in the world? It's Donald Trump. Now, the British may not care about getting Donald Trump. We don't know what level is going on here. But these arrests were not made without the king having said, no one is above the law regarding his brother, and issuing a statement after the arrest, a very brief statement that ended with the phrase popularized by Elizabeth, who assumed the throne, remember, as a very young woman in 1952. And that's our job is service and duty. So
you make such a good point about the way in which he was brought in. That's and the message that it sends. Yeah. He took so many pictures. You know, in the Epstein file release, the one clear thing is that they're hanging a lot of stuff on Andrew. And I'm wondering if it's a distraction from sort of what you're suggesting, which is that there are other very powerful people who probably were in every bit as deep as Andrew, and maybe including...
That's why I brought up the security guards.
Okay.
So if you're a security guard, whether it's the U.S. Secret Service or the British Service, your assignment is not to interfere in misconduct by the protectee, as they're called. So if your assignment is a grandchild of President Trump and the kid goes to a rave and is using drugs, none of your business. You're not there to enforce the law. You are there to protect. However, people in those jobs, like everybody else in law enforcement, they have to file reports. They have to keep logs where they were and what happened and who was around. And I would say there's an extremely high likelihood that the security details of Andrew, particularly when he was made a government employee as part of a trade mission, which is what the charges are about. They're not about sex trafficking. They're not about child rape. They are about official misconduct by disclosing state secrets connected to trade negotiations, and specifically disclosing them to Jeffrey Epstein. My guess is the security details have already been interviewed. And if you're on those security details and you fudge the entry in a log in order to disguise or hide Prince Andrew being with some 13-year-old girl, government now has leverage over you. One of the things I always tell my students and fellow journalists, never do a single thing that will let anybody get leverage over you, and your life will be a lot better. Nothing may ever happen to you, but nobody can get leverage over you if you don't ever engage in misconduct. So the security people will know who was around him, where he was, when he was. The British authorities may be interested here in national security matters that go beyond this. What other contacts did Andrew have? Who else was he doing business with? Was he like the former ambassador who's doing the same thing, giving Jeffrey Epstein state secrets that Epstein apparently used to profit in the stock market? Is this going to be a threat, a further threat to other people? And that's why I think the way this was done is the Crown prosecutors who had to approve this were sending a message. You think you might be in trouble? You need to come in now. You need to reduce our workload. And if you're good boys and girls and you do that, we will consider, 2 years in prison instead of 20.
You draw the distinction that jumped out at me as well, which is he is being prosecuted not for the misconduct with the 13-year-old, but for the secrets, state secrets that are apparently, it's argued, divulged during his relationship with Epstein.
And that gives a much stronger lever to the Crown prosecutors. First of all, Britain has something called the Official Secrets Act. And under the Official Secrets Act, some of Andrew's conduct may fall. That would absolutely, if they think it falls under that, explain the tough tactics that they applied in arresting him. But you get a lot more leverage when you say national security than when you say child rape. That's just the way the law is. And by the way, let me clarify that in the case of Andrew, I don't think he's been accused yet anyway of 13-year-olds. I think Ms. Giuffre was, when she says she was raped by him, she would have been 16, I believe, under the age of consent, although Megyn Kelly would approve.
Right.
And a lot of people are very nervous about all of this today. From the point of view of American citizens, this is going to weaken and lead to challenges about the cover-up that's being run. And earlier this week, the New York Daily News, which I write for occasionally on the opinion pages, said exactly what you've heard me say on the show for years, Mark, that this is not a presidency. This is a criminal organization that's in control of the White House. And they came flat out and said it, and I don't think they'll be the last ones to say it. Finally, we're beginning to get some mainstream news media to step back from, oh, well, it's just politics in a different sort of unusual way, to recognize we have a con man, white-collar criminal. And
the sane washing is what you're talking about, and you're starting to see that kind of ebb. You're saying there's less.
Well,
and less
also
of it.
Just flat out saying these are criminals. These people,
sure.
Pam Bondi, the rest of them, they're engaged in criminal conduct. So some likely things will happen. Andrew's defense may at some point try to obtain Epstein files. They're going to want to know what Epstein files the British government has. It may well have files of its own. If they want files that the Trump administration has, is the Trump administration going to honor our obligations to cooperate in law enforcement? I don't think they will, but it'll be an issue. Remember that the Norwegians have charged their former prime minister, their functional equivalent of Donald Trump, with gross corruption for his dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. Financial dealings, not child rape, financial dealings. But lots of other people who were around the former Prince Andrew, really need to be very worried right now about what is up for them. And we don't know what British intelligence may have that they're not sharing in these matters, but you can be sure that every lever the Crown prosecutors can bring, they will. They would not have done this, and they would not have done it the way they did it unless they intend to have a big rack deer on the shelf. They're not interested in having a little mouse on their desks in a plastic case. They are looking for big game.
The British were always out in front on this, weren't they, David? Like when they stripped him of his title, it seemed as though they were clearly, as a result of their investigations, privy to stuff that had yet to sort of break here in America the way it has now.
Well, I think what most likely happened there is, and years from now people will start talking about this, is a high likelihood that Keir Starmer, the prime minister, or someone else told the king, who they report to regularly, he's the head of state, what was going on. And if not, Charles, whatever you may think of him, he's not stupid. He's a very sophisticated man. Somebody told him, maybe even his brother told him, yeah, if they want to prosecute me, they've got me. So he was kicked out of the royal family as a preemptive move. In the same way that, you get a police officer gets arrested for murdering somebody for profit. The first thing the cops do is fire them so that it will always say former police officer. That's a self-protective move. I mean, I don't think there's any objection to that. That's what you should do. You should separate yourself. And his statement today, the king's statement, or I guess technically it was the monarchy's statement, it doesn't offer a single word of sympathy or support for Andrew. They have just left him out to dry.
Well, as I was saying, there's so many compromising photographs. I mean, it's like you can just, you can see it.
Yeah. And in his case, we have a bunch of photographs that per se don't indicate anything that's a crime, but they sure smell.
Ex-Prince Andrew, I have to read this. I'm sorry, it's hard on my screen. Arrested on his birthday. Yes. Trump tweeting witch hunt while dodging the same Epstein spotlight. Yeah. Royals fall, billionaires stall is what Wes in Florida is saying. Yeah.
Mark, what can Donald do at this point? He has made his line in the sand. Originally, I'm going to make everything public, I'll do that. And then he backs up and says, well, I don't want to embarrass my friends. Now his position is it's all a hoax. It's a witch hunt. It never happened. There are people stupid enough in America to believe that and to go with it and who will justify it. And there are people indeed who will not be offended with what Jamie Raskin said the other day. He went into the FBI facility where we know now that the administration was capturing all your keystrokes so they would know what you looked at, which is totally improper. But apart from that, he said that he found girls as young as 10 and a mention of a girl who's 9. Remember Megyn Kelly, the Fox News host? Well, I'm not approving this, but come on, these girls were like 15. This isn't like they were 5-year-olds or 10-year-olds. Well, now we know there are 9 and 10-year-olds. I'm waiting to see if Megyn Kelly and her other smug friends who defend Trump at every turn start to change their tune. And of course, down the road, if we get evidence, not just smoke and suspicion, but solid evidence that Donald Trump was raping girls as young as 12 and 13, getting hand jobs from them and hit one in the face because he wasn't satisfied with the oral sex that she gave him. There are going to be people who will say, well, I was always against this. Nobody listened to me, but I was, it's just like everybody in the world says that they said in the fall of 1963 that they voted for John F. Kennedy, who barely won the election. Right. You're going to see a lot of this revisionist history. At the same time, there's a danger out here. I've already gotten today 2 fake images. Very well done. Because, at the moment, I would argue that in terms of fake imagery and fake videos, we're sort of in the Model T Ford stage, but we're going to quickly advance to the Tesla stage. And it'll be harder and harder to do that. And the picture you have up on the screen right now, I think, is very revealing. There's Donald with Melania early in her plastic surgery career. And there's Andrew on the right and Epstein in the background, and Ghislaine Maxwell and an unidentified woman in a white almost a strapless dress, not quite spaghetti strap sort of dress. And so there's no getting out of the relationship here. And Andrew, one of the things I got asked several times by overseas TV today was, well, would Andrew really talk about other people? And yeah, he's going to rat out people. The reason he got arrested the way he did in part was they put him, like everybody else, in a plain jail cell before they put him under caution. That's the British version of the Miranda. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. And they did that to make clear to him that you have any prospect of not going to prison, it's dependent on you giving up everybody we ask about, being absolutely scrupulously honest, and we may still charge you with child rape.
And what's interesting about this, I think, and distinguishes it immensely from what would happen here, is that it's happening in Britain. So the control that Trump has over it and the Trump functionaries may be a bit more limited.
Yeah, I probably won't live long enough to see this, Mark, because I suspect this is 25 years out in the future and I'd have to live to over 100. But someday we'll probably find out that today there were phone calls placed by Trump minions to try and pressure British intelligence that this would damage intelligence interests of the United States and Britain.
And the relationship between the two countries, probably.
And yes, and that this would cause economic and other harm. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll come out long before then. But just knowing how these things work, that's highly likely to happen. So going forward here, you're not going to hear a lot of news in the near future because of the way the British law works on privacy. Eventually, everything has to come out, but not right here. The next big thing to look for is when and if Andrew is allowed to go home. If he's not allowed to go home, even if this isn't in the public record, it suggests they think he's a flight risk. Now, I don't know where he'd go and somebody would protect him, but if they think he's a flight risk, they can hold him. Normally, they can only hold you for 96 hours. That's 4 days, not calendar days, but by the clock. And after, I think it's 48 hours, British police have to get some approval from higher up to keep holding you. And not greatly unlike our system, except we're most jurisdictions 72 hours. And it will be the effort to get documents. Maybe we will see the Andrew's lawyers try to get material from the estate of Donald Trump, because the estate of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Epstein. When a search warrant is executed and things are taken from your home or your business, the authorities have to give you a detailed inventory, and they then must return everything they don't need that isn't contraband or give you a certified copy. Well, if you have drugs, you're not going to get those back. One of the developments we're going to see before long is the administration will say, we can't show you the videos and the audios because there are ones that show grown men with girls below the age of consent, and to merely look at those images is to commit a felony, a 10-year felony. Now, law enforcement is obviously exempt from that. They have to be. You can't prosecute a case. You can do some redaction to show to a jury, but if you're going to try somebody for that, you're going to have to show the evidence to the jury. But Congress oversees the president. We talk about them as co-equal branches, but Congress makes the rules, Congress appropriates the money, Congress passes the laws, and the executive's position is to essentially be the errand boy of Congress. We've allowed presidents more and more and more power, but at the end of the day, the Constitution is very clear. The president is the commander-in-chief of the military and the errand boy of Congress. And if they try to pull that, to say, as I anticipate they will, oh, we can't ever release these, that's contraband. That's where Congress, once the Democrats are in control, can step right in. Among other things, if they want to be super safe, they can pass a law saying for any member of Congress to view these pictures is deemed not to be a violation of law.
I see, yeah.
And fix that. So a lot's about to happen. This is like you're looking at a big dam, and there's a little stream of water coming out below the water line. Eventually, that dam's going to collapse if that happens and they don't patch it.
So they released him from the police station based on what Albert just flashed up the headline.
They
I
have
guess.
released him. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So Andrew
he's a flight
pictured
risk.
leaving police station following arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office. So
I can't imagine where he'd run. So I'm not surprised they released him then, because he'd only hold him as a flight risk. There will be a lot more conversations with this, and no way did Crown prosecutors approve this without total, complete confidence that they had him dead in the water.
Sure. David, I'm seeing this in the chat, and I wanted to ask you about it anyway. So let me just quickly ask you about Iran as it relates to Epstein, okay? As it relates to a wag the dog kind of move on the part of the Trump administration. Can you speak to that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Meaning, is Iran, to the extent that it's a distraction from Epstein, is the likelihood of some military conflict with Iran raised, amplified because of what's going on with Epstein?
Iran is absolutely first and foremost a distraction. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been to the U.S. basically every couple of weeks since Trump returned to office, and he is deeply concerned and wants us to be the muscle to go after Iran. Trump has put more ships in the area, but we do not have ground troops to make an assault. Those ships are not full of hundreds of thousands of Marines, and the Iranians have 1 million people who either are active on duty or have been trained as a military. They have battle-hardened troops from the 8-year war with Iraq, even though it was 30 years ago. They would be senior officers at this point. We're not going to make a land incursion in Tehran. What we can do, and the reason there are 2 aircraft carriers there, is send fighter jets, fighter bombers, missiles, and drones to attack various targets. And Trump may well do that, but he was going to do that if he was anyway, to try and get the Iranians to come to heel. And the Iranians, illegitimate as I think the regime of the Ayatollahs is, they do have a sovereign country. Donald Trump is not, much as he thinks he is, dictator of the world. And the Trump administration has to be very careful, and Netanyahu has to have a great interest in replacing the Ayatollahs who want to take us back to the 9th century, which is a crucial period in the development of Islamic belief and practice. Young Iranians, the median age in Iran is 32. Half of Iranians are younger than 32. They didn't live under the Shah. They've only lived under the Ayatollahs, and they're fed up and they want to get a new government. It's an unstable government right now. If Trump mishandles this, he can assure the Ayatollahs they'll keep their grip on power. If he handles it right, he may be able to topple them, which I think would be a good thing, although, the devil you don't know could be worse than the devil you do.
Right. When the Shah brutal Shah regime was installed by the U.S., it's not so dissimilar. I mean, right? I mean, there was a democratic election of Mossadegh.
Mossadegh was democratically elected. He scared the CIA people who had come through World War II. We saw to it he was deposed. And then what happened with the Shah is what happens with all dictators and will happen here in the U.S. if we do not get our democracy back. At some point, he began purging his closest allies over in Iraq. After we put Saddam Hussein in power, there was the meeting where he called out the names of his supporters. And you can hear them in the film. They're taken out of the room and shot. And all dictators at some point have to have a purge of their top leadership to enforce discipline to their dictatorial control. And then eventually, because of the hatred that breeds, especially 1, 2, and 3 circles out, and if you can get Tim Snyder on, I'm sure he can talk about this much more eloquently than I am, you have to start having firing squads or their functional equivalent. You can have a gulag if you want. You can hang people, but you've got to grab other people to instill fear. Dictatorship requires 2 things. It requires a coterie of people who will support you out of fear and maybe loyalty. And secondly, you need to have an outer ring of people, including just Joe and Joan Sixpack, who are an absolute terrorized that they or their daughter or their son is going to be grabbed and shot simply to enforce the dictator's control. And Donald Trump, if he lives long enough and we do not get out of his dictatorship, he will have to do the same thing. And you know, I'm likely to be one of the people who gets shot early on, not as a loyalist, but as to make a point.
Well, dissenters are already, I think, vulnerable. So
Yeah.
you'd be a lead dissenter, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite a large group of us. But I would also just note on Iran, just as a footnote, that guy you're talking about, the Shah, his son is sort of in the wings, waiting to take over. He'd be the American.
Mark. By the way, you're correct. You would be on the list too. The audience should know that. I should have said that. I apologize. That was bad on my part. It is astonishing to see the guy waiting in the wings, who we are apparently helping to go back to power, is the son of the Shah. My God, really? That's not going to sell with the young people, of whom the Iranians apparently have now acknowledged in various ways that, yes, they have massacred several tens of thousands of Iranians for demonstrating against the government. That's part of that portion of Islam that wants to go back to the 9th century. That's not all of Islam. It's a narrow group of people. But remember that MBS, Donald's good friend, who's the dictator in Saudi Arabia, about 12 years ago, had 39 imams, pastors, clerics, rabbis, 39 imams beheaded. Their crime? They publicly prayed for a better government. We're dealing with really vicious people here in terms of their disregard. The problem is we have a president of the United States who has an equal disregard. Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, those people, the word honor is to them meaningless. Duty, meaningless. Service, the two words brought up by King Charles, meaningless words.
You know, I am going to, I'm so grateful that you come in for a second visit, and I know our time is short, but I did want to talk to you just quickly because I remember from your writings the way in which Russians acquired real estate from Donald Trump in the form of condos, as I recall, in your one of your books, and they overpaid for these condos. And what's happening now with warehouse acquisition on the Department of Homeland Security's agenda, all of this warehouse acquisition, they are overpaying by 5 and 6x what the actual price of these warehouses. So I'm talking about an acquisition of a warehouse for $120 million that's actually valued at $30 million.
Right.
And
so first
when
of all,
you look to see the ownership, sorry, David, I just want to last thing. If you look to see the ownership in some cases, it's Russian. These are Russian, they're Russian oligarchs with their, it would seem anyway, their hooks into America. And this is a grift.
And some of the others we may find that if you can peel back the layers of ownership, you're going to get to Russians. First of all, there are federal laws to protect us from grossly overpaying. You know, is a building worth 30 million or 33 million? You know, that's business judgment. 120 million, 150 million for a $30 million building, that's a crime. And so the people doing these deals, just the ordinary folks signing the paperwork, they should be very careful because the next administration may well prosecute them, and certainly should not maybe just functionaries, but ones who went along because they didn't want to lose their job. It's very clear that the Trump administration is not building these to deport people. They can move people out of the country quite quickly. They are building these as detention or concentration camps. One of the members of Congress went into one of the camps. There's a law that says that members of Congress can show up unannounced. They must be shown any ICE detention facility on the inside. They've been being rejected, but one member got in and he came out and said, I mean, this may have been a lawyer actually for somebody who was there, that literally the men in this facility were packed like sardines. There was no room to walk around. You were just shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't lie down. The conditions were utterly inhumane. In those kind of conditions, if somebody appears in that group who has measles, which is transmitted by air and is incredibly infectious, 90% of the people there who either haven't had the measles or haven't had a vaccine, they're going to get the measles. And some of them are going to die. Some are going to go blind. Some are going to become sterile. I mean, all sorts of things will happen. Measles is a really terrible disease that the Trump administration wants to make an option for childhood vaccination. The facilities that they're building They're cages, and they're for long-term holding. And of course, people in these small towns are overwhelmed, because if you have a town of 8,000 people and you suddenly bring 8,000 people into one of these warehouses, the draw on your water system means you're not going to be able to water your lawn. You may even be able to wash your dishes. Your sewer system's going to be overrun.
And that's the pushback. What you're talking about is the pushback from these communities. Exactly.
Yeah,
that their infrastructure isn't sufficient for this stuff.
And the senior senator from Mississippi, Wicker, who lives in a small town, has written a letter in no uncertain terms. You will not do this in the town where I live, little tiny, small town, and don't do it anywhere in the whole state of Mississippi. Talk about not in my backyard, NIMBY thinking. But people pay attention here. Donald Trump has been very clear. He intends to arrest people he doesn't like. He intends to, he would regard you and me and most of the Democrats in Congress as traitors. He calls people like us that all the time. And he obviously goes around saying, and the penalty for being a traitor is execution. Just to be technical for a moment, you cannot commit treason right now. We are not in a state of war, and the Constitution only allows that in a state of war. You can commit treasonous crimes. There's crimes that still cover that. He has said he intends to strip naturalized citizens of their citizenship if he can find anything they've done. And they've literally arrested people for making a right turn without the turn signal. And when it turned out the case was thrown out because the cop lied, the dash cam or video cam, body cam showed that the turn signal was on, they deported the person anyway. He has said he wants to take Americans and deport them. Technically, you can't deport an American. You can remove an American. But he's going to do this. He's telling you he's going to do it. He got Congress to give him this unbelievable budget that is bigger for Border Patrol and ICE and that group of federal law enforcement agencies than all the rest of them put together. I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah, it's all right there. If however you want to evaluate it, if you follow the money or you just follow what's said, it's all right there. And as you said, just this word out of the administration just in the last day, they want to aggressively rescreen those who've already been greenlit to be in this country legally.
Right. I was listening this morning to a woman who, she and her husband and their 1-month-old baby are on their way to a government office to get papers for the child. ICE blocks the car, smashes the driver's window, pulls the father out, leaves the mother and the 1-month-old baby in the car. The source of this story is the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. And while I'm no fan of Kathy Hochul, she also has a reputation for being a straight shooter. So I'm sure she had good reason to talk about this case. People, you really need to pay attention, and you need, and look, they plan to interrupt the elections. They plan to have law enforcement. There's a federal law that law enforcement's not supposed to be within 1,000 feet of a polling place in any way that might intimidate voters. You think they're going to pay attention to that? I don't think so. I think
it's a desperate struggle they're into. Yes. This election represents a real threat and a threat to power. And so, I agree. David, thank you for making more time for us today. Really cool to talk to you about all of this stuff. And the echoes of what you've written, that's why when I was reading the warehouse stuff, I thought, oh my God, David wrote about this in The Making of Donald Trump, I want to say, and a couple of other texts. It was quite clear that the same dance is being done now with taxpayer money, And
Mark, if you go back and rewatch the TV series, The West Wing, one of the astonishing things about it is it's the same issues today. And that's because Americans have this belief that we solve problems. No, in a democracy, we manage problems. And right now, we're mismanaging badly.
Now let me blindside you last thing. Ask David K. Johnston about the recent request for a social media order by Trump. All Democrats and liberal social media records, if you have ever said anything against Trump / the GOP or I. So this is what you're saying, David. I guess that this is coming.
This is the very definition of a First Amendment violation. The framers of our Constitution were very worried about an executive who'd be out of control, about a king, even a temporary king. And the First Amendment is there to protect your right of speech, your right of religion or non-religion, your right of press, your right to assemble peaceably to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Donald doesn't want that. He wants to get rid of that. He doesn't believe in it. He has said many times, going back to before he ever said he was running for office, which is 2000. He's talked about as far back as 87, but I mean in a serious way, that it should be against the law to write things about me that I don't approve of. That's as Stalinistic, as Maoist as you can get. And people need to recognize he's doing what he said. The one thing I say for Donald is when he plans to commit a crime, when he intends to commit a crime against the Constitution, he only hides the things that he needs to for his personal issue, like whatever video, audio, and photographic evidence there is of him with underage girls, if any. But for everything else, he tells you what he's doing. And the reason is people go, well, he couldn't be a crime if he's telling you that.
Right.
Sure, it could if you're stupid enough not to understand. So,
Yeah,
gotta go. Take
no
care.
sleight of hand with Donald Trump. Thank you, David K. Johnston. We'll see you. Yeah.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, what a treat. Second visit with David K. Johnston this week is something unanticipated and really, really cool. Smash the like button if you would for us. It helps us in the world of YouTube. It costs you nothing. And if you haven't
with your iron rod,
subscribed to the show, hit the subscription. And that way we can show up in your feed occasionally and hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there is a new video. I do want to tell you about our new baby. That's right. We have a Facebook page. We just got it. Well, the kids, it seems, Albert, they're just on this new thing called Facebook. That's what's so exciting. It's, I didn't realize, I don't know much about it. But
Albert, thank you.
I guess all the new social media-driven kids, you youngsters, are on Facebook. And so we are on Facebook now with a new Facebook page.
What?
I know. You can find a link to it under this video. And we'll be able to post videos there and new content there. It'll be a way for you to interact with us. I think there's already, in fact, I know there is a Facebook fan page that we have. That's not ours. That's not official, but you guys started that, and it's really cool. And I've been on there a few times, and there's really some cool stuff and cool reaction. So you can find that as well. But our Facebook page is under this video. So you can see it, The Mark Thompson Show on Facebook. So if Facebook's your jam, now you can jam onto our page. I have Olympics news. I have more Department of Homeland Security news, ICE news. I've got a lot of stuff when it comes to Pam Bondi, when it comes to the law, and David Katz is still on deck. He joins us in hour 2. David and David. So I'll get to that as well. I do want to mention for you,
The Mark Thompson Show.
the people at Zellman's are very happy with all the ways in which you have jumped on their product. Zellman's Minty Mouth. I used it last night, and then I used it before I went to bed. You know, as I mentioned, you, Courtney and I road tested Zellman's to make sure it works before we brought them on as partners. Zellmans.com, Zelmins.com. Our discount code is worth 15% off. It's Mark T. It works because the outside of the capsule is minty. Okay, so you get that minty thing, and that melts away, and you have what's left is a capsule, and that's where the action is. You swallow the capsule. I usually wash it down with a quick hit of water. And as I say, I take like about 3 at a time because it's all natural, and the parsley seed oil in there, that's what interacts with your stomach juices and keeps the bad breath from forming. It neutralizes the things that form bad breath. It comes up from your stomach, all the bad breath. So it's really a cool technology, and it's kind of a basic chemistry, and it does work. So Zellmans.com, again, use our discount code MARKT for 15% off. Tiny capsules, huge results. Zelmins, Zellmans.com. Again, Mark T at checkout for 15% off. So Oh, all
The
right.
Mark Thompson Show.
Albert, I want to quickly check in on the chat. Love our chatters. And here they are. Thank you to Richard Delamater, who wrote me about 40 emails last night. It's always good to...
I've received a lot of positive letters.
A lot from Richard. I'm on the wine train, but listening. Slurp, slurp, he says. Well, good for you. Richard, you're a big supporter of the show.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
With Richard, he's a party boy. He brings the party. And good for him. Lucy McAllister, my favorite McAllister.
Big shout out.
A big shout out with a $19.99, $20 super chat. She says, good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah.
Morning.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Love that. Love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For the $20. Luis with the music news that I turn over to Albert. Albert, can you put it up there? Because my computer is just not, Props to my musical heroes, U2, for releasing the EP Days of Ash on Ash Wednesday. Track 1, American Obituary, is a powerful tribute to Renee Good with a message to Donald Trump. Quote, you can't kill what cannot die. Hashtag U2 rocks. Thank you for the $10 super chat, Luis, with the sentiment.
Big shout out.
That is powerful. Apparently, it's really good. I was talking to somebody last night who said it is a real powerful album and great music. Have you heard any of it yet, Albert? No.
I have not, no.
Yeah. But it just came out, but I talked to somebody last night who said it's really good, but really good. I hope that song gets some airplay. So, also in the comments,
And now, your comments.
Mindy says, "Where were those girls' parents?" This is in relation to Epstein. Why didn't they stop the girls from these activities? Well, two things to say about that. First of all, I think there was significant effort to find girls who didn't have relationships with their parents that you might traditionally think of as those that would be solid enough where a parent might protect the child. I mean, they're really, if you watch any of the documentaries on Epstein, if you've read anything about Epstein at all, you probably can remember that they're looking for kids from broken homes. They're looking for kids who are kind of rudderless in terms of direction. They're selective about who they get. And then, of course, as you know, the models, aspiring models who they felt might succumb to pressure of one sort or another. I mean, these girls were groomed. According to all of these writings, they were groomed by Ghislaine Maxwell quite effectively. And they created an environment in which these women were and girls and underage people were held there with a real threat. They were scared in some cases. In other cases, it was the inducement of maybe some work, modeling work, whatever. That's what brought them in. And after that, as I say, the grooming continued. So it's not always quite the way we will, game it out in our mind. CNN was reporting that Ambassador Mandelson in the United Kingdom is also being investigated for Epstein misconduct. That's interesting as well. And thank you for that, Sue Ann. And that's another level of what's happening with Britain clearly taking the lead in terms of repercussions, although you're seeing powerful people go down, right? In legal offices, in entertainment offices. I mean, sacrifice entire careers. The reputational damage will be substantial from the Epstein files and the Epstein revelations. So I don't think there's really any question of that. Quickly, I take a break from that to tell you about the Olympics. I don't know if you've heard, but the Olympics
The Mark Thompson Show.
are a big thing. And I do have a follow-up to a big story. There was a story about the condoms at the Olympics. You'll remember we had a report that the condoms, they've run out of them in 3 days in the Olympic Village.
Thompson, party of four.
No, it wasn't me. It was Olympians. Every Olympics, they offer condoms to the athletes in the Olympic Village. And the way the story was being spun was that they're having so much sex in the Olympic Village that they've run out of the condoms.
What?
But the reality is, maybe in part, that there's a lot of sex going on. But the truth is that a lot of people at the Olympic Village take fistfuls of condoms, and it's a great souvenir of having been at the Olympics. So if you're in the Olympic Village as an athlete or a coach, etc., you see these things, and they're emblazoned with the Olympics logo, and so people take them by the fistful, and that's another reason that they ran out. So I just wanted to kind of give you a complete picture of that. I haven't heard it reported anywhere. I always hear it reported like, well, they're really having fun at the Olympics in between the. Well, as it turns out, there might be something else going on. The Olympics reporter who was drunk on the air is pretty terrific. She's is it Australia or New Zealand?
Australia, I believe.
Yeah,
yes.
Australia. Here she is in the drunk moment, and then we'll play for you the apology moment.
Literally, the price of coffee over here is actually fine. It's more the price of coffee in the US that we are going to have to get used to. I'm not sure about the iguanas. Where are we going with that one? But anyway.
Yeah, so that was her report. Now here's her apology.
Look, I totally misjudged a situation. I shouldn't have had a drink, and especially in these conditions, it's cold, we've got altitude, and not having had dinner probably didn't help as well.
Gonna keep it.
Yeah, so here we go.
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
That's right. My bad, right?
My bad. I'm sorry.
I like how she just has to do an apology. I think there would be a formal thing, and she'd be suspended here if this was U.S. television.
Oh, you're absolutely right. She would be shamed beyond shame if it was in the U.S.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
I do have a condom update. They did restock them as of 2 days ago.
Oh, that's really terrific.
Right. I hope to see those on Facebook Marketplace in my area.
They will be. They will be sold. I'm sure of it.
We're in better shape, but I don't think we're in wildly better shape.
No, of course not. The other story out of the Olympics, just because we are talking Olympics for a moment, is related to money. The monies associated with the Olympics, as you might imagine, are substantial, even though Olympics sort of has this thing, about amateur athletics. The Olympic star, who is the speed skater fiance of Jake Paul, poised for a huge payday, $1.4 million for flashing underwear celebrating the gold medal. Now, if you're not familiar with this person, they are, again, in the speed skating world. She's very glamorous, Albert, isn't she? And
yes, I'm pulling up a photo right now.
Yeah, you can get a peek at her. And as she celebrates her gold medal, apparently she exposes a bit of her undergarment. And that exposing of the undergarment, the white Nike sports bra, that exposing in the celebration will likely make her over $1 million, everyone. So, yeah. Now, Olympians not paid to compete, but a lot of countries offer prize money for athletes who win medals at the games. And, of course, you have the buy-in from various corporate interests like Nike. And again, she has 6.3 million Instagram followers. Again, it's Leardom. Is that her last name? Yeah.
Yes.
And she celebrated her victory by buying a Hermes Birkin bag, which retails for more than $10,000. And again, she has a Dutch makeup brand, and she has a Facebook business that's massive. So there's a lot of money that is going into the medalist pockets. And it's not just the medalists. Snoop is earning a reported
Where are my weed
$500,000
smokers at?
US dollars a day. So over the 2 weeks, he will make, anybody, between $8.5 and $9 million.
What?
Yeah. He's not even in the Olympics. He's reporting on the Olympics. Pretty incredible. And then there's
I hope
this.
Martha Stewart's
What?
getting some of that. Because
Yeah,
I know
her his old partner, Martha Stewart. There was a pretty big blunder, and I'm going to turn this over to the commissioner because Albert knows hockey and sports. The game between the Czech Republic and Canada. This game was tied up 2-2. Less than 8 minutes in the game left. The Czech players flew down the ice. They found the back of the net to put their country ahead. There was one thing wrong from what I'm reading, Albert, and I wonder now if I can turn the story over to you and you can tell me what happened between these two titans of ice hockey.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, it was actually crunch time. It was in the third period, which is the last period, and it's getting towards the end, and the Czechs did score a goal, but they did have too many players on the ice. It's typically a penalty, but it went unsought. Like the refs didn't catch it.
So what happens in a situation like this, Albert, when the refs don't call it at the time?
This is actually a non-reviewable play, so that play still would have counted. If they missed it, they missed it, which is unfortunate. And all of Canada was losing their minds over this. I'm trying to find this other photo of them celebrating. You can see even in the goal celebration, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 helmets there.
And there should only be 5 guys on the ice.
There should only be 5 guys.
So,
but
yeah.
Canada did eventually tie it a couple minutes after, and then eventually win it in overtime. So crisis averted, but all of Canada, even now, even after the win, all of Canada is not really happy about this.
Yeah, and Canada, of course, embroiled in another controversy. And in that controversy, they are the offenders. That was the story with curling that I told you the other day with the double touch.
Yes, and they had that side view. The guy said it was a premeditated, like a camera angle. But I mean, if you're reported using double touch for years, I think the Dutch were accusing them 7 to 8 years they've been doing this. So,
yeah,
I mean, it was their time to get caught.
Right, and so the side view showed the double touch.
I've never seen anything like it.
But the official view is a forward view. And so for that reason, it's
that classic forward. You can see them in the squad. It's very cool. It's a very cool sport. Not exciting, but it's very fun to bet
somehow
on.
When you're watching it, it's exciting. And now apparently you can bet on it. I mean, there's a pretty healthy betting market for curling, believe it or not. I mean, again, it really only comes into prominence every 4 years as an Olympic sport. But this is, I'm sorry, I have to turn this off here. You're not hearing it, but I am. So bettors apparently are showing significant interest, as noted here, in the quirky sport of curling. And there's definitely a stronger curling hockey split than what was expected, says a trader at Caesars Sportsbook, where people are able to bet. The total amount wagered on this Olympics will far exceed that of the 2022 Beijing Games, mainly because legalized sports betting has expanded in the U.S. in the interim, and these games are easier to track live because of the time zone. The curling alone is going to take 7 figures overall. It's going to take $1 million overall. If you would have told me at the start that we'd be turning over $1 million in wagering on curling, I wouldn't have believed you. But there's a lot of interest here.
I wonder what kind of other creative bets you had there. Do they have how many sweeps, the over-under, how many times they're going to be sweeping the ground? How many yells? It's a very loud sport. They're always yelling the whole time. Yeah, they're
yelling at each other which way to. It's wild. Really crazy. Anyway, that's your story on the Olympics. So there you go.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. I am loving my Clarity Blend. That's what I'm drinking this morning from Coachella Valley Coffee. Now, the Clarity Blend is supposed to bring you, in addition to the great taste of Coachella Valley Coffee, It also is supposed to bring you some mental clarity. I don't know if that is what it's doing, but you can read about it on their website. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. This is not a discount roastery. This is a boutique roastery. This is the best coffee I have ever tasted. I was drinking it before they came on this show. They are wonderful. There's the Clarity Blend with the lion's mane added. I think there's even a decaf Clarity Blend for those of you who are getting a little too much caffeine. But however you want it, I recommend it. I also recommended to you the Sunrise Blend, which I think is great. I love the Ocotillo Espresso. I love the El Gato. There's so much there. And that's just on the coffee side. And on the coffee side, they hand roast all of the coffees. Everything is curated so effectively there, both on the coffee side and on the tea side. They have loose leaf tea. They have all the different kinds of manifestations of tea that you could possibly want, and spices as well. Once again, they take such pride in the curation of the very finest. Check them out at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Use our discount code MARKT for 10% off, and I promise you, you will be happy. Sample, enjoy, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Again, MarkT at checkout for 10% off.
Put that coffee down.
It's so delicious. All organic and ethically sourced from women-owned farms. Love my Coachella Valley coffee. One more sip if I can steal it. I need to reorder, says Holly. I'll try the Clarity Blend next. You really will like it. You really will like it. Good stuff.
This is
All
so
right.
ridiculous.
We will continue.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The Dow has shattered 50,000 for the first time. This is
that
crazy.
Great? Pam Bondi always watching that Dow for us. It's really exciting. You know, whenever you want to know what's happening with the Dow, you hit Pam and she can tell you.
The Dow is over 50,000
yes,
right now.
Of course.
The S&P at almost 7,000.
Thank you, Madam Attorney General.
And the NASDAQ smashing records.
It's so cool. I can see why you'd be distracted from the Epstein files and from and the justice system, because with the Dow doing what it's doing, you know, you can only expect
The
that.
the Dow right now is over. The Dow is over 50,000.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a big fan. Big fan. Always great to hear from her. Coming up, David Katz. Will you let me know when he gets here?
Will do. This is about the time he usually joins, but yeah, we're just trying
okay,
to
so that's why I'm saying if you can keep an eye on it, because I can't really see when he joins. I do want to give you a couple of things that are happening in other parts of this administration. The NIH director is going to temporarily run the CDC. Big leadership shakeup. How does he say his name? Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. Going to serve as the acting director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention until President Trump appoints a permanent director. He'll continue to run the NIH, according to people who are on the inside, who are speaking about personnel decisions. The CDC has run through a bunch of people, as you know, in leadership roles since Trump came back to the White House. A lot of people have resigned. This guy has no formal training in public health, so he is perfect for this administration. Am I right? Yeah. He's focused on well-being, and this is, at least his expressed focus. He's a physician and a medical economist. He went to Stanford, and actually, I think he was a professor at Stanford before joining the Trump administration. So, this is kind of his background. But this is an impossible task to run both agencies. You can't run NIH and the CDC. I mean, these are massive organizations, even as pared back as they have been. So, for example, Michael Osterholm, who's an infectious disease expert, I think he's been on the show. He's at the University of Minnesota, and he says this is a recipe for disaster to have one guy running both of them. And The NIH is in Bethesda. I used to pass it all the time because I grew up in Washington, D.C., and the CDC is in Atlanta. So when you're managing these teams, on some level, at some point, you have to manage these teams in person. So anyway, that's a little bit of what's happening with the CDC and the NIH. The other thing that I think is worth noting is the way in which the Fed is being bullied by Kevin Hassett. Kevin Hassett is probably an even bigger ass kisser than Scott Bessent is. Scott Bessent, who you always see justifying some ridiculous tariff move that Donald Trump has made or some economic bizarro explanation that Donald Trump has. The deregulation of crypto, for example, taking away the consumer protection agencies from government. And these are all things that these guys are out in front spinning for the media to somehow make it seem as though it's a well thought out move on the part of the president. So anyway, Kevin Hassett, if you can find a picture of Kevin Hassett so people know him, Albert, he is the top economic advisor to President Trump. And again, I think he distinguishes himself because he's really, he just doesn't blink as he cranks out the BS. So he has now gone after a study from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And that study finds that the U.S. in its tariff policy is actually punishing U.S. companies in the sense that U.S. companies are bearing the burden of tariffs. So the idea somehow that countries that are involved in tariff policy are somehow bearing the burden and American consumers and American companies don't bear that burden, that's just wrong. I mean, we all know that, but it now comes out in a study from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And instead of, he knows that there's no way you can logically dispute it. So what does he do? He attacks the messenger. He says, what they've done is put out a conclusion, which has created a lot of news. It's highly partisan, based on analysis that wouldn't be accepted in a first semester econ class. Again, attacking the Federal Reserve from an administration that repeatedly has bullied the central bank, the president himself repeatedly attacking Jerome Powell. He wants lower interest rates, and his attacks are just unrelenting. So now he has his henchmen out there attacking news that so clearly reflects a reality, right? So now, in addition to the rhetoric, as you're aware, there is an ongoing investigation whether or not Jerome Powell misled the Senate over monies that were associated with the renovation of the Fed's headquarters. Remember, there's $2.5 billion, and Trump is saying he misrepresented that. And so the literal investigation going on at the Justice Department is around whether Powell misled the Senate in testimony over that $2.5 billion renovation of the Fed's headquarters. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous because it's all just a play to exert pressure on the Fed and let them know we're the boss here, the executive branch. The president is the boss. And if you can't do what he wants, we'll get somebody in there who will. And as you know, Powell will be out in May. So this is not a new thing to attack economic data and research that, comes through with conclusions that the administration doesn't like. I mean, the president this summer called on Goldman Sachs to get rid of their top economists because they concluded that U.S. firms and consumers, again, would bear most of the tariffs cost. I mean, this is what the New York Fed said. This is what Goldman said. But Hassett was really looking for that Fed chair role. And I think, he's bumming that it's this other guy, Kevin Warsh. It's not going to be Hassett. I mean, I think in a way, Hassett's too good at being a henchman for Trump to get the role leading the Fed. But now he's out there again, knocking down what is clearly reliable information. Yeah, that 90% of the economic burden imposed by tariffs is borne by U.S. companies and U.S. consumers. 90%. The tariff policy is insane, and it really just set up a system of patronage whereby people and countries come to the president and say, what deal can we make for you? For you, Donald Trump and Trump Inc., for you and your family. And so you end up with Vietnam greenlighting the resort. You end up with Middle Eastern countries greenlighting resorts there, all of which Trump has a piece of. So that continues to be the way in which tariff policy works for Donald Trump. And of course, lastly, he's able to hold it over the head of any country and any leader that he feels just isn't behaving the way he wants, maybe not ingratiating themselves the way he wants. Canada is a classic example. He's threatened, as you know, almost weekly additional tariffs on Canada. So that's the latest on all of that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I see him in the green room, Albert. I see him in the green room. The distinguished counselor. This guy is a brilliant mind. He's one of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world. You've seen him on Fox News. You've seen him on News Nation, BBC, Australian television. Across America, he pops up here and there when, in fact, I don't know how he does it, because he has a thriving legal practice, but he was a former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney, and as I say, the brilliant legal analyst, David Katz, everyone.
Hi, great to be with you, Mark, Kim, Albert.
I was watching you with somebody, maybe it was Fox, and they were making a case for something. I wish I could remember exactly what it was. But
the
it was
Zuckerberg testimony was upcoming in the social media addiction trial here in LA.
Yeah, the Zuckerberg testimony, exactly. And there was some cobbling together, I thought, of an argument by the other guy. And Katz comes on and just goes, yeah, that's interesting. There's no way that actually legally holds up. And then he just you sort of dismantled the whole thing and broke the case down. But it's a pretty big case. You know, Zuckerberg testifying in a case that could kick the door open for a lot of other cases like it, that social media is a vulnerable place for kids to find themselves, and the safeguards to prevent kids who are under 13 years old from using social media, those safeguards are pretty insufficient.
Well, the other Fox guest was a plaintiff's lawyer, and of course he was chomping at the bit to file his own case against the social media companies. And that's not the kind of practice that I have. And I tried to point out that I really don't have a dog in that fight. I mean, I'm apprehensive, obviously, about some of the things that these social media companies do. I also think it's worth pointing out that, there's a whole industry, Mark, which is wonderful, made possible by YouTube, these podcasts. And so we certainly shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And I think YouTube is a kind of different experience from the social media Meta, and Instagram platforms that are not only more addictive, meant to be more addictive, but are more of a problem for the tweeners. And there was some very good evidence in this case that I think it was Zuckerberg and the top staff had reviewed internal memos, which said if you want to get them as teens, get them as tweeners. And then, Zuckerberg also goes on this campaign that they really don't want this business, and they've taken all the safeguards not to get that 10, 11, 12-year-old business. And you ask anybody with a 10, 11, or 12-year-old, it sure seems like Zuckerberg has managed to get an awful lot of that business. I was just pointing out a couple of things about this case. Number one, that it's not a class action. People should realize it's one individual person trying to collect quite a bit of money in damages for what she says she suffered, namely Great Depression and psychological harm. Good lawyers for these social media companies, they've been able to get a hold of and be allowed to produce her medical records, the plaintiffs, going all the way back to when she was 3 or 4 years old. And the medical records show, and they've argued strenuously, the defense, that she had a lot of mental problems before she ever encountered YouTube or Facebook or any of the Meta products, and that's in terms of her individual right to relief, that she may have been particularly prone to this kind of addictive behavior or to psychological problems. And but it was quite a circus down there, because a lot of people whose kids have committed suicide, who have issues over body issues, the body filters, the beauty filters that they have on these social media devices, they're very upset, and they're particularly upset if they've lost a child to suicide. So they were outside the courthouse. And the last thing I'd say, because there's lots of other cases I'm sure you want to talk about, but the courthouse where it was tried, Mark, is the old federal courthouse. And in that federal courthouse, which has now been turned into a state civil courthouse, that's where I was, like in the late 80s and early 90s, as an assistant U.S. attorney. And the U.S. attorney's office still maintains 4 or 5 floors in that building, but the courtrooms have been turned into state civil courtrooms. That's where Zuckerberg was. That's where the head of Instagram was last week. And that's where this trial is going to be. The last thing I'd say is that they're very well funded on both sides. We don't know how much they've settled for, but these plaintiffs' lawyers have already settled with a couple of the big companies. So they have an undisclosed amount of money, but they have the incentive of future damages they hope to win against these companies. So they're going to take this road show all around the country, Mark. They're going to fight class actions here, there, and yonder.
Well, this is interesting.
Individual lawsuits, and they're going to fight individual lawsuits around the country.
Thank you for drawing that distinction, because the fact that it's not a class action may be a technicality, because it is going to be precedent for what you're talking about, which is taking them all around the country, and there'll be these cases because there are legitimate, on the part of many parents around the country, legitimate concerns and legitimate damages up to and including the loss of their child over stuff that they got wrapped up in when it came to social media platforms of one sort or another. So in a way, it's setting the table for these cases. Like how this case goes, David, wouldn't it very much inform how these other cases will be brought?
Certainly in how the public sees it and how the media sees it. There's a very interesting thing in law school, which law students, when they're learning it, they kind of go, aha, that's interesting. And you think about the reciprocity of one of these cases, okay? So if they end up, it's just one plaintiff here against a bunch of defendants who'll be the same defendants all around the country. So if this lady ends up losing, and we may not even know, there may not be a specific verdict where we know it's because she had this tremendous depression even before she started using the product, or if it'll be because it wasn't particularly addictive as to her, or that the design is such that many people would be addicted, but she would not. There are these general issues, Mark, and the fact that she might win or lose doesn't mean that, if we had a child and we sued, it doesn't mean that we would win or lose. And the idea is what they call collateral estoppel, this idea that, wait a second, it's got to be both-sided, and it's not both-sided. If she loses, that doesn't mean you and I bringing lawsuits should lose. Likewise, if she wins, it doesn't mean that you or I should win. And so that's what the defendants argue, you see, that they have a fair chance to do it all over again. Since it wouldn't have bound them the other way, it doesn't bind them this way, and they get to sort of start from scratch. Now, things like testimony can be used. So if Zuckerberg made admissions on the stand, every plaintiff will get a transcript and say, well, Mr. Zuckerberg, didn't you say in the LA civil trial such and such, and now you're saying something contrary? And in fact, he did testify in front of Congress under oath. If you remember that he famously had to turn around and apologize to the people who were in the courtroom. So that could be used against him in this LA trial, and whatever comes out on the testimony by him or the Instagram head here, that could be used against him. Some medical reports, you could present the medical report. You can go cross-examine it, right? But the medical report is the medical report. And just the last thing I'd say about this case is that, they're, as the other guest said in that Fox show, they're a billboard, and they have protections, these media companies, as a billboard. And that's what the judge found, that they are not responsible for what they rebroadcast. They're not responsible for the content of what people write and then they broadcast. That's controversial, but that's kind of the idea of that civil suit, that civil statute that's protected them for so long. I think that's Section 230, that they don't have the responsibilities that a normal publisher has to make sure that everything they publish is accurate, or at least has been vetted. They're allowed to be like a billboard and sell their dissemination. So this suit is limited to, the judge has ruled, maybe she's wrong, but the judge has ruled in this case that they can only be held liable for the design and the operation of their system, not for the specific things that they send. And this gets into issues like, I say, the beauty filters. The beauty filters is something that they say, you know, you should just ban this. The beauty filters make people really distraught. They're not worth sending out. And then the answer to that is, wait a second, the people with the beauty filters have free speech. We're a billboard. We're supposed to stop everyone's free speech. Now, it's not government conduct, so you get into that whole issue. Couldn't they suppress speech and get away with it in a way the government could not? Couldn't these companies say, we don't want your advertising dollars for this. We are going to ban this. And then you get into the whole issue, remember, Mark, that the conservatives were raising a few years ago, when they said these stations are liberal, they're woke, and they won't carry our messages. And people say, well, they're not the government. It's not First Amendment conduct. And people said, wait a second, they're so much like the public square. They have so much power. It is almost like the issue with the government. It is almost like the First Amendment issue. If all these companies won't let right-wing people speak, now if they won't let left-wing people speak, they cancel people just like that. It does sort of represent at least the philosophy of the First Amendment, even though it's not technically government conduct.
Yeah, it's interesting that so much of media has undergone a kind of media capture on the part of this administration that in some ways, in increasing ways, I would say, the media has become an arm of regime propaganda. I mean, the acquisition of CBS, Paramount, by someone who's a Trump ally, the Ellison family, both Larry Ellison and his son, they're in the basket of Trump when it comes to supporting Trump and also getting favors from Trump. I mean, when I say favors, I mean the Trump administration has to basically green light these acquisitions: the Paramount acquisition, the Skydance acquisition, the Warner Brothers acquisition, which is what they want next. These are all things that you sort of have to play ball with the administration if you want that green light. And so increasingly, 5 people have control over all the information that we're getting. And so I see this as an interesting way in which America has slid into this place where there isn't really a kind of distinguishing feature between what the White House says and what the CBS Evening News says. Just for example, I mean, and so I'm quite concerned about this. I wanted to.
Can I say one thing on that, Mark?
Please, yeah, of course.
I was, I'm very concerned about this. And it used to be that people played by the norm, the politicians, the president played by these norms, because the idea was that the people would understand that it was repulsive, it was corrupt to get involved with. The president of the United States is going to weigh in on a merger. There's an antitrust division. There are people who weigh the competitive impact of it. That huge merger allows them to take over some industry or not, whether it's comparable, all those kinds of things. Do people have other options so that they don't have to pay monopoly prices or gouged prices if the merger takes place? These are economic questions that people have spent their careers. There are antitrust divisions, Department of Justice, antitrust, that analyzes these. The idea that the president would stick his finger on the scale, people would be repulsed by that. That is not a precedent. That is not something that, Nixon did it. Even Nixon, even LBJ, think of whoever were the overbearing presidents. They knew that was hands off. So this is repulsive. This is wrong. And the whole idea of Allison's son going up against Colbert. I mean, this is a genius going against someone who has no sense of the entertainment industry. Allison's son, talk about a nepotist going up against an artist like Colbert. The nepotist, he didn't make it through SC Film School, and then he made a movie called Fly Boys that was a huge flop. And this guy's going to decide what Paramount movies, what CBS is going to show. This is raw political corruption. This is the nepotism that we have now, from Trump, the Nepo baby himself, to Kushner, the Nepo baby, to Ellison's kid, the Nepo baby. They go on and on, and RFK Jr. another Nepo loser. It's just unbelievable. But we are where we are, Mark.
Well, I mean, and with the media, I think you're talking about the kind of propaganda and fire hose of misinformation and made-up facts that really kind of influence how the public feels about everything. And just to double back to something you said, because it is sort of a quaint remembrance that we had of the movie studios and the media companies being associated with the creative arts, because it used to be that there'd be an executive who would read a script and they'd really believe in it, and it would be something that they would produce financing for, or they'd cobble together additional financing with another studio ultimately if it was a really big movie. And I mention all of this because that is really going away. What you now end up with, really to your point, is you have people like this, the Ellisons, who are wildly wealthy, money that came out of Oracle is now, and there's nothing wrong with being wealthy, and there's nothing wrong with money coming out of software and out of Silicon Valley. But what I'm saying is they have now just taken over these various media companies, and so those things that are associated with the creative evaluation of various projects, et cetera, that's gone. Now it's really about the bottom line, and so in keeping with that, the creativity goes away, and now it's about propaganda. It's about playing ball with the administration. And again, it's sort of like, hey, whatever the administration wants, let's not get in their way. We need their approval on the Warner Brothers deal, so let's just, let's just play ball. And so, from a literal bottom line standpoint, it's what they want and what they'll do.
Mark, you're showing that picture of Ellison's dad, and your Bay Area viewers especially will remember when they had America's Cup up there in the San Francisco Bay about 10 or 12 years ago. And I went up there to see the America's Cup race. And I guess America's Cup was funded by Ellison. And I couldn't believe it, the hatred. And they detested Ellison so much in the Bay Area. It appeared to me people were rooting for the foreign squad against the USA, anything to make this hated Ellison Sr. lose. So, yes, they're way into Trump. And, I think they're going to be tarred with the same brush. When Trump falls, and it will happen, it's not going to be the Vichy regime in France. What they did is not comparable to what the Vichy French did. But there is going to be definitely an accounting. And people will turn around and say, wait a second, these people were like the Vichy French. They were not ruling in America's interest. They weren't doing things for me. And the voters who thought that Trump really was that he had the right message, even the Trump viewers who thought that he had the right message, boy, was he the wrong messenger. And he's just obviously in it for himself. I mean, I know your viewers know that, but there are some people who are probably tuning in for the first time or haven't seen the show. And, I try to put it right down the middle. I try to be right, not wrong, but I want to hear the argument on the other side that Trump has come through for his voters. On what? On the economy? On these raids of these cities? That was his most popular issue. And people won't stand for it. Americans, right wing, left wing, conservative, we've been against invading armies since the time of the Redcoats. And to have these invading armies come into our urban areas. One thing that's interesting, Mark, there have been over 1,000 agreements with local police offices, with sheriff's offices, over 1,000 more in this year than Biden. For the people who think Biden didn't do enough to deport people or let too many people into the country, that's one thing that Trump has done that his voters, I'm sure, would say. He's made agreements with police and sheriff's offices that they will find people who are illegally in the country and they will deport those people. And a large percentage of them will be people who've broken the law. But this other means, the roving patrols, the masked agents, them going to schools and churches, this is so obviously the wrong perspective from anybody, no matter what your views are on immigration, whether there are too many people, whether people ought to be deported now more than they were then. He's just going in such a wrong direction. Every day, Mark, you see the grift, you see the corruption. I'm sure you put it on your show. You're absolutely right. These folks are worried that they won't get a merger approved. And you saw what happened with CBS and Colbert and all that. And Carr, he says, what does he say? The head of the FCC. Colbert keeps saying FCCU. FCCU. But
Brendan Carr, exactly. Right.
The timing wasn't even hidden, Mark. That's what's so unbelievable. Usually in the rises of these authoritarian states, they're very, very careful. They try not to just throw it right in the face of the public. But Trump has that part of him that wants to throw it in your face. He wants to say, yeah, I got away with it. You see that? I'm so corrupt and I got away with it. He's proud of the corruption.
There's no sleight of hand with Trump. I've said it a million times. It's just right out there. And the other thing, just to follow up on what you're suggesting, is that 2 points. Obama, of course, deported, and Biden deported enormous numbers of people. And they did it without breaking windows and pulling mothers through, these broken glass covered windows, and some 1-month-old or 2-month-old child who was horribly sick being deported at the same time. They did it without the violence. They did it without the thuggery. They did it without the execution of American citizens. It happened in large numbers. I mean, larger numbers than they're deporting people with now. In Obama and Biden's administration, he just didn't have any of this. The deportation and detention regime, I think, is to feed the world of private prisons. They've acquired all this warehouse space for tens of thousands of people nationwide, and I've reported on this and will continue to day after day, because there's a lot of money changing hands that shouldn't. There's a lot of overpayment for these areas that is associated, I think, with a kind of money laundering. When you pay $128 million for a warehouse space that's worth only $28, you've overpaid by $100 million. There is something going on there, and you can look at the chain of custody and see that some of it, anyway, goes back to Russian ownership and perhaps is underpinned by that Russian oligarchy present in this country. But what I was going to ask you about legally is the aggressive re-screening that the administration is saying that they are going to do for people who have already received approval for residency in this country. They are going to, and this is a quote, aggressively re-screen now. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think in general, unless there are really new facts, I think that it's closed. I think it's the law of the case. I think the case has been decided. The matter has been decided. Now, like a lot of judgments, if you can go back and show that there was fraud, if you can show that there's a document which showed that the person lived here for 2 years, and then you can show later on it was a phonied up lease and the person only lived here for 2 months and they made the lease look like they lived here for 2 years, you could probably present that and ask to reopen the case with firm proof that the document that was, material to the court in granting the relief was phony, and you're going to prove that it's phony, and therefore there should be a different decision. But that's not what they're really going to do. They're not going to do that much legwork and hard work. They're just going to try to go in there and wave their arms and try and get the judges to do something different than the immigration judges have done before. Now, you might say, how on earth could that happen? But, they fired a lot of immigration judges. They've tried to put their own stooges in there as immigration judges. And so it is likely that, some flunky, some Trumpy stooge, even though they give him a black robe and they call him the immigration judge, once a stooge, always a stooge. So they may get turned around. And then I think those will be reviewed. One of the great things in this country now is that we have all of these pro bono lawyers, and we have all these civil rights groups, the ACLU. If you have money, please try to contribute it to them. Think what great benefit they've done for the country. Every time you read about one of these cases where they're not allowing, these roving patrols, where they're returning somebody back who shouldn't have been transferred out of the country or to a different state, or some child who shouldn't have been taken away from their parents. You don't see the big law firms. The big law firms have been intimidated. Someone like Paul Weiss, you would think that they would have every one of those cases. They used to try to tell the young recruits, oh, come here. We're not just money grubbers at Paul Weiss. We really care about people. We're bringing all these great pro bono cases. But you don't see the Paul Weisses. You don't see, some of these huge law firms that make $10 million per partner. You don't really see them on the forefront of these cases like the ones that you're just talking about, Mark, right now. And so thank God that we have those folks bringing these pro bono cases, young people. Some of them are getting forgiveness of their law school debts to do that kind of public service work. And it's just all for the good. And they're those lawyers and the judges who have independence, the Article 3 independent federal judges, have been really what saved this country from some of these awful results.
Can you speak to something that you, as Katz have predicted, but we're all waiting, and that is the Supreme Court weighing in on the legality and constitutionality of presidential tariffs, those tariffs that are levied by the president, in this case Donald Trump, on foreign nations. There's been a lot of talk around the tariffs. I had talk today. There's been analysis. I mean, I don't think the tariff situation is that, A, hard to understand, B, has too many moving parts from the standpoint of the way tariffs work. But what has really been a question is which way SCOTUS will rule. And in early oral arguments, it's what we have kind of discussed before, it seems as though the justices will be loath to allow the president the kind of latitude that he's taken to bring these tariffs in the ways that he has. Can you speak to if there has been anything else that you've seen in the tea leaves that would suggest the way that SCOTUS is going to rule on tariffs? And also, when are we going to get that decision?
Well, just a very quick primer. A tariff is a tax. The taxes and tariffs are to be set by Congress, not by the president. Whether it was right or wrong, back in the 70s when we had the oil shocks and the oil lines to get gas, Congress allowed the president in a true emergency to take action on tariffs, even though it was a power that Congress had. But the idea was that in a true emergency, the president might need to take action. No president has ever thought that they should use that emergency power since the 70s. None, not ever. This was a power that then Trump couldn't resist arrogating, so he could throw his weight around and use it to get all kinds of favors. Vietnam wanted lower tariffs. Well, Trump wants a golf course to be cleared for him quickly and allowed to develop over in Vietnam. Trump couldn't resist it. It was such part of the grift of his way of doing things. So he took that power. Congress didn't do anything to stop him right away. And his emergency, supposedly for these tariffs that he unleashed all over the place on all these different countries, and that's him holding up the different rates, and the rates then moved around, that got challenged in the courts, that it was not a true emergency. He said fentanyl's coming into the country. Well, it's been coming into the country for a while, and he said we have a trade imbalance. We've had a trade imbalance for decades. No true emergency. So there's a court that rules on those kind of matters, a federal court. They ruled against Trump, but they didn't stop the tariffs from being collected. Then it went to an appellate court, which had 11 members. A large majority of them ruled against Trump, but they also didn't stop the collection of the tariffs. So about 3.5 months ago by now, that issue went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And as you said, the argument seemed to go very much against Trump, with even justices like Gorsuch saying this doesn't look like a true emergency. And this is not the separation of powers that we're supposed to have in this country. Like I just said, Justice Gorsuch said, it's the Congress that's supposed to set tariffs and taxes. So with losing Gorsuch and from some other questioning, it was clear that there are 5 votes against Trump. So the conundrum is, how come they haven't stopped the collection of these tariffs if 3.5 months ago they already expressed their reservations about it? And it looks like the decision is going to be coming very soon. And so, and there's people actually betting on it. When I do my Katz, I never really stop and think that now there are betting markets. People bet on this stuff. Please don't bet on Katz, although I am running a streak of being pretty right. So I think that what's likely to happen is it's going to come down in the next week. I think if you look at what happened with a major ruling of this, we have the State of the Union address coming up on Tuesday. What happened before with the major decision last year was they went to the State of the Union. 5 or 6 of them smiled at him. I think that's when Trump whispered in Chief Justice Roberts' ear, "I'll never forget you." That was over that monstrous presidential immunity ruling, supposedly. But I don't think that they want to rule against him on this major tariffs decision and then go look at him the next day or the same day at the State of the Union address.
Oh, that's a good point.
Thomas predicts that on Wednesday of next week, the morning after the State of the Union address, they will rule, I think, 7-2 against Trump on the tariffs issue. Trump will be petulant and he'll say, well, I'm just reimposing them under some other statute, and that'll get challenged in the courts. And then under the Supreme Court ruling, they'll have to figure out how to give the collected tariffs back to the importers. And then we poor consumers will have to try to figure out some way through class actions or some other means to then get what we've overpaid back.
Well, that's what's being asked here. How are consumers going to get a, quote, refund if SCOTUS rules against Trump? And you're saying it's going to have to be through class action?
I think we'll have to bring a class action. In some instances, it may be that it depends how far down the road you are. If you're The major importer that had to pay the tariffs, if you're like a person regularly supplied, they may have some mechanism, maybe it's in their contract, that if a tariff's collected and then recovered by the importer, that you, this person right under them. But certainly there's no contract that protects us if you went into Walmart or you went in somewhere else and you paid $5 for an item that would have cost $4, but for the tariff. You know, the other thing that's so cynical about this is that other countries, of course, retaliate against our tariffs, particularly against farm goods. So instead of Trump saying, look, this is a great policy and we're sticking with it and we're all in this together, what he actually does is he takes our tax money and he gives all of this relief to the farmers so that the Republicans will win these states, these farm states. So he'll win Iowa, or the Republicans will win Iowa, they'll win whatever. So they take the money that we're paying at excess, Mark, to buy all of these things. And then he says, oh, there's this windfall. We're going to get $1,000. Have you gotten your $1,000 back yet, Mark, for the tariffs windfall that we've got? No, we've just paid higher prices for everything that's imported. That's what's actually happened. And then he takes the money and he sends it to his favorite states so he can try to swing those states Republican again in the next election with those handouts. You know, welfare. Well, that's Republican welfare.
Let me just talk about you just kind of spoken of the corruption associated with the administration in one way. I think there's also a lot of grift going on. And then you find those who are within the administration who are part of the grift also. I've talked about how, and we will continue to talk about how Kristi Noem basically shovels money out to her friends and family as part of various media buys. You know, the media buys are a big part of this administration. So the media buys are funded by taxpayers to tens of millions of dollars, and a lot of that money goes to, again, friends and family of those who are in charge of running that money. But when you find Tom Homan, you find a guy who really was caught in an FBI sting in a way that you don't need to know anything about media buys and where there are various friends and family who might benefit. There is $50,000 in a bag, and he takes it in cash and promises in this FBI sting, supposedly, to have, in return for this, granted or planned on granting favors in the incoming administration to contractors who, again, bribed the guy with the money. So Homan took the money. It was in this kava bag, in this, restaurant bag. And now, and this is the background on it, but now there is a government watchdog group suing the FBI to force the release of the video that reportedly shows what I just described. Border czar Tom Homan allegedly accepting this $50,000 bribe. Can you speak to the viability of this lawsuit and how this video might actually be seen by the public?
Well, I think this video will surface. They're trying to do a Freedom of Information Act request. There are some exemptions to what the government does not have to turn over, despite the Freedom of Information Act. One of those is like personal or records, and the government has said that this is a personal record, and it's not an indicted case, and so the public doesn't really have that great a need to know, which is ridiculous. Of course, it's not really private or personal at all. He's a huge official in the government. The most controversial program, I think, of all of them is the roving patrols, the going to churches, schools, workplaces, going on these roving patrols and like just disrupting the entire life, including the economic life of cities like Minneapolis and Los Angeles for a while. And he's the guy in charge, Homan. And the allegation is that when it looked like Trump was going to win, I don't think he actually won yet. But while he was high in the polls and people were thinking, wow, this guy may actually win again, he'll probably appoint Homan again because Homan was one of the officials in Trump won. Wow, this guy Homan's going to have a lot of influence. We know Trump loves these private prisons. He loves spending all this huge amount of taxpayer money on private prisons. I bet you this guy Homan can help us private prisons get a spot, get a private prison built, get Trump's approbation. And so with that in mind, they met with Homan and they gave Homan a bag with $50,000 cash in it. And now the case, because Trump has won, is not going anywhere. It hasn't been indicted by the feds. It's apparently not being pursued by the feds. it turned out to be an FBI sting. And so the people that he was meeting with, that he would have had every reason to believe were in fact doing a quid pro quo to bribe him for official favors. He thought they were businessmen. They were very good actors from the FBI pretending to be businessmen. This is all on tape. This is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Law students want to know what proof beyond a reasonable doubt is. You know, where's the reason? Where's the conjecture? Where does it really hit that clear? You get up in the rebuttal closing if you're the prosecutor and you say he took $50,000 in a brown paper bag, and here's the videotape of it, and here's the conversation that they had about it. Now, the administration says two things. Number one, they said they didn't take the bag, but that's now been refuted. It's very clear that he took the bag. And the second thing is that, you know, he didn't really promise he was going to do anything. He doesn't really have power over authorizing any private prison. If you believe that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn I'm going to sell you. If you believe this fellow in charge, as he is, of ICE, right? He's the head of ICE. If you think that he can't promote private prisons or get a particular private prison, there's one called GEO, G-E-O. And it's just terrible. It's terrible how they treat people. It's terrible that we stand for this. I mean, you look at something like Europe, and they would say, I mean, how about the Enlightenment? I mean, forget modern. Since the Enlightenment, we don't have private prisons. We don't have this idea that we're going to pay you this amount of money, and the worse you treat the prisoner and the less you feed the prisoner, the more money you can put in your pocket, because this is a private prison.
Well, and you're paid by the head. So when you get to policy overall, there's actually incentive not to deport anyone, not to release anyone. The more people you have in your warehouse, the better for you. And
they wrongly sent a guy down to Peru. He filed a lawsuit, okay? And the government says it's moot. He doesn't want to come back from Peru. And his lawyer says he doesn't want to come back from Peru because he's going to be thrown in one of these private prison hellholes. He'd rather hang out in Peru and be outside the United States right now, consider himself lucky. He wants to be in the United States, but he doesn't want to be in a hellhole for months and months and months.
I am going to finish up with you with a lawsuit that takes place in my old hometown of Washington, D.C. A pair of Washington area golfers suing the Trump administration over the president's plan to overhaul a public golf course, saying that it violated several laws and the original spirit of the park. These are frequent patrons of East Potomac golf links, and the Interior Department, they say, skipped required environmental and health reviews to rush this project through because Trump wanted it rushed through. The D.C. Preservation League, a nonprofit that advocates for protecting historic sites, we know that they were sort of overlooked when it came to the wrecking of the East Wing. They joined the lawsuit, and the opposition to President Trump's agenda to reshape this golf course seems legit in the sense that all of these parties are suing to try to stop this project and vacate the federal approvals and block any reassignment of the existing lease. Can you speak to this? I mean, I think it's managed by the National Park Service, this area. And so this is that federal thing where it would seem in every way Donald Trump is committed to the flex.
Well, first I want to say, in the interest of total disclosure, that my German immigrant father said to me, don't try heroin or golf. They're both very expensive and they're addictive. Maybe meta products are addictive too for tweed.
That's funny.
This is so ridiculous.
So while I'm not a golfer, I love golfers. And I imagine it's Washington, D.C. I imagine it's a lot of minority people, working class people who go and play on this golf course. And that Donald Trump and his minions, his billionaires, are trying to do everything to arrogate this golf course, to take over, commandeer this golf course for him and his rich friends, and not have the working people near Washington, D.C. It's just, it's like one of those stories. It's like you could have predicted this one, and they're probably going to try. And luckily, they brought a lawsuit. And if the bylaws if the provisions for this golf course, it goes back to the 1800s, right?
Right.
If they were clear enough. That it's to be, held in perpetuity. I think what Trump is saying is it's run down.
Exactly.
And so in the 3 years that he tries to address it being run down, he and his cronies will play on it. And then we'll find out later on, shocking, it wasn't really that run down.
Yeah. He says, we're going to make it a beautiful world-class U.S. Open caliber course. Ideally, we're going to have major tournaments there. Everything else is going to bring a lot of business into Washington. It's the same thing. You know, he's said the same thing about his big, beautiful ballroom. And I like the fact that, as you say, it's historic. You know, it goes back to the 1800s, and that this coalition is coming together to try to sue to keep it open. And right now, it is being kept open, and we'll see what the court ultimately decides.
I have one last question for you, Mark, really quick. And that is that 12 members of Congress are going to boycott the State of the Union. If you remember, when Biden was president, we had Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the other one, that
Lauren Boebert or whatever, yeah.
That coy coquette from Colorado to be alliterative. Oh, yeah. Those two were screaming, carrying on, interrupting Biden and stuff like that. 12 of them are going to boycott it. And I've always wondered, especially in this polarized environment, why aren't more than 12? They're having their own like counter State of the Union. They're going to have a very nice meeting and talk about important things. I don't know why they go to the State of the Union at all. They don't have any respect for Trump. They shouldn't have any respect for Trump. What he's done is outrageous from the point of view of the Democratic Party. And it should be him, his Republicans, and the Supreme Court justices that he put on the court.
You know, this is a really interesting point you make, and it hadn't occurred to me. There is such a reverence and adherence to institutions in Washington and at the federal level that there is something that the Democrats constantly fight. I mean, as you know, I hated this about Biden, that he's an institutionalist, and he somehow just, you know, it would be wrong if we didn't go to the State of the Union because the State of the Union is something that we should always attend. I mean, it's a different world now. You're right, where the president has
under Trump? Why under Trump, the way he's acted, the cabinet?
He's declared war on your party. I mean, he's called you out as treasonous. He's called you out as un-American, as traitorous. I mean, this is incredible. Now, I ask you, though, as a former federal prosecutor, I mean, do you overlook this rhetoric and just go, it's just he's a petulant leader who's just angry? Or do you take that stuff seriously and say, no, I'll show you how, you know, traitorous we are. We're not going to show up to your State of the Union.
Well, for most of the time I was an assistant U.S. attorney in L.A., Ronald Reagan was the president. And you could disagree with him on the huge tax, giveaway that he gave to the very rich. That was under Reagan. The very rich paid 70%. If you made $1 billion, yes, you paid $700 million. You kept $300 million. You kept $300 million in a year at a 70% tax rate. Reagan got rid of that. And of course, he was known for the Cold War. But there was nothing like this. I used to say to people who say, well, you worked under Reagan. Wasn't Reagan like Trump? I said, no. Everybody liked and respected Reagan, even if they disagreed with him. Nobody likes and they all disrespect Trump, even if they think they're going to make some money out of him. So Reagan, to me, was totally different. And of course, Reagan made a lot of deals. He did the amnesty that kept a lot of people in the United States on immigration. He did a lot of other things. He didn't publicize them that much, but Democrats could get things from him. So there was a reason. And not just, respect for the institution, but also on most issues, he would listen to reason and the Democrats could get somewhere with him. It doesn't seem like that's true with Trump at all. He just steals and he does exactly what he wants. And they lie about everything, from that poor guy, Preddy, who died in Minneapolis. There's just this pattern of lying about everything. The Republicans have to try to, and the media has to try to get the word out. People like you get the word out of what the facts are. But I don't think that, Reagan didn't trample the facts over and over again. And, there was him and Tip O'Neill, all of those stories and stuff like that. But they, you had to half a loaf, as OBJ used to say. And it doesn't seem like that at all with Trump. So I really don't know why. I know like 12 are not going. And I really think that others may rethink that. I think that by Tuesday, we may see a lot more than 12 Democrats not going to the State of the Union.
These definitely are different times. And so that's a watershed moment perhaps coming. And I mean, amidst other watershed moments that we've seen in this first year of the Trump administration. David, so grateful for your input always. Thank you.
Look for next Wednesday, and then I'll be on next Thursday. And I love the thing that you and Albert, I guess, put up there of me and Bondi. That's like the most hits I've ever gotten on your show, Mark. You had me and Bondi up there. So when people clicked, it was like, wow, this is interesting. And you had me saying crazy and incompetent. and me and Bondi on the screen. I don't think I said she was crazy. I definitely did say she was incompetent.
This is so ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, all I know is when I need to know what the Dow.
The Dow has shattered 50,000 for the first time.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
The Dow. It's the Dow. It's
the
all
Dow
about
is over 50,000 right now.
Yeah.
The S&P at almost 7,000.
Right.
The Dow right now is mashing records. The Dow is over 50,000. I don't know why your 401ks and retirement savings are booming.
I know. Okay.
And Mark, your fans may say you have a loser lawyer on. I haven't even made it to Congress. Everybody who's made it all the way to Congress and sits on those important committees and are questioning her, they're all losers at her book. She's not a loser, I guess, at her own book.
No.
Wow.
Professor Katz, can Donald Trump extort his way into naming airports and government buildings after himself and then demand government payments for the licensing of his name? Yeah, that's his play. Thank you, Luis, for that. That's his play, which is to demand it. And then, of course, you have to pay a licensing fee to use his name.
I think he'll do two things. He'll try to tie them up in as many litigative postures as he can so that the subsequent administrations will have to pay him some money, at least to go away. He litigates everything. So I'm sure that he's stuck enough things in there that it'll be hard to take his name off. There'll be a severance fee they'll have to pay him. He'll do that. The other thing he'll do is I think that he'll make things that'll be very hard to, if he builds a bridge, he'll put Trump in a certain way where it will make the bridge less secure to try to take the TRUMP off of it. Man. Don't think he won't do it, Mark. The Democrats have to have some imagination and figure out what he's going to do. Don't let him make the TRUMP removal, make the whole structure unstable. He'll think of that.
Unbelievable. Thank you, David Katz. We'll talk soon. David Katz, everybody. Yeah. Wow, that's just crazy. Unreal.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thanks for all of your comments along the way. I did want to mention our newest partners. I'm so excited about this partnership. It's working out so wonderfully. The Sweet 106 Bakery people are happy. You're happy. And it is perhaps the most delicious partnership that we've ever had. Sweet 106, for those who are just listening, sweet is spelled S-U-I-T-E. We said Albert some, and he was in a cupcake coma for most of the weekend.
What?
Yeah, it was quite
it's hard to ration those things out when they're very good. But I got sent the Snickers and the red velvet. Very good. I'm glad those were the two ones that I got because those were perfectly layered for me and my girlfriend.
Yes. I was guarding the red velvet, and it comes in that canister. You see, just like Albert has it up there, the Sweet 106 canister. They're all fresh baked to order. So when you order something, that's when these small batches are baked and produced, and that's why it'll take several days to get to you. They're baking it, during this time. Then they send it out. And that that cupcake, okay, so it's in that canister. It's really 3.5 cupcakes, layered cupcakes. That is genius. That is more than just baking. That is some kind of crazy scientific, Nobel Prize winning bakery thing going on. It's so delicious. Now, don't take my word for it. Try it, and try it with our discount code. All right, sweet106bakery.com, sweet106bakery.com. The discount code is MARK-T. You'll use it at checkout. You'll get 15% off. Again, sweet106bakery.com. Use the discount code MARK-T. You'll get 15% off. And everything on the site is amazing. There's some special things coming in the next month or so, and we'll have them back on to talk about it. But I love this small business. These are all small businesses that are our partners on the show, and Sweet 106 Bakery is another level of delicious. Sweet 106 Bakery, S-U-I-T-E, sweet106bakery.com. Mark T at checkout for 15% off.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Let me quickly go through a couple of comments, if there are any comments.
Your comments.
I don't know if there are any, Albert. Are there any comments?
I think there's a few more. I think we got to most of them. We have this one from...
Trump will not be tried, says Ole Hansen. His health will prevent that. Oh, well, see our video about that, which is up on our channel. There is at least one expert who agrees with you. How much responsibility should the parents have for letting a 6-year-old have a phone? Oh, this is on the question of social media. Thank you, Ren. There should be restrictions on what the phone can do. I agree with that. Sadly, these technologies are finding their way into the hands of younger and younger people. But to your point, there should be some limits and some supervision. And sadly, there are in some houses, there aren't in others, you know.
And I mean, us as adults are getting tricked by all this AI stuff. I can only imagine how these formative brains from kids are, you know, seeing these AI fake images, and it's controlling how they're thinking and how they're viewing things. So it's very concerning.
The AI world makes life so much more difficult in so many ways. It also creates a deniability. If you want to get back to Epstein, you want to get back to Trump, you want to get back to some of the other high-profile people associated with that world, you end up with the deniability that comes with, oh, that's all AI, you know. In many ways, it creates as many problems as it solves. So I do want to mention, last thing, our Facebook page. This is its launch today, is the first day. So if you haven't yet, please join. What is the Facebook? You have it here in the description. There it is. But to reach our Facebook page,
I think it's just facebook.com/The Mark Thompson Show. And that's it.
There you go. Wow, that's pretty easy. You'll find videos. You'll find other content. We'd love for you to join us there and hang out for a while. There is a Facebook discussion page that is associated with the show, like a fan page. That's not, we're not associated with that officially, but you can certainly go there and hang out too. It seems like a pretty cool place. But this is our official page, and so it will be populated with videos. It'll have other content, and I think you'll enjoy it. As I say, it's only our first day, so it was a long time in coming, but it has come. And so we will have stuff on there and look forward to some interaction with listeners, and we'll share some of that. By the way, Albert, I read all the comments on all the videos, and I got comments about my conversation with Rothman, and I can't wait to share those. Maybe I'll share some of them tomorrow. They are not complimentary toward me.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah.
This is so ridiculous.
Thank you, everybody. And now
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Tomorrow we tee up the Big Friday show.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Don't miss it. Until then, bye-bye.